Hi scholars, this video is going to cover key unit 2.1 and 2.2. All right, so first of all, 2.1 deals with where people are distributed. 2.2 is why is population increasing. All right, so this is a population density chart, and as you can see, based on the arithmetic density, physiological density, agricultural density, percentage of farmers, all of this matters in being able to determine a country's development. So I want you to pause for a minute and think about which country is the most developed, which country is the least developed, and think about why it is this way. All right, so you're probably thinking, which one is the most developed? Well, we could say that United States is the most developed because you have only 1% of farmers. You have a very low agricultural density, 0.4. But I want you to think about something too. The Netherlands is also pretty developed because if you think about it, look at their physiological density number. They have a lot of arable land and they have a low percentage of farmers. So they are also very developed and they have a fairly high population. And then I want you to look at Canada. So Canada also has a low agricultural density and it has a pretty low, arable land, low population, but if we're looking at the percentage of farmers, it's pretty developed. Now, Egypt, on the other hand, look at the high agricultural density. You'll have 25% that are farmers. So 25% of all sectors, you have farming that accounts for that. And you have a lot of arable land still. So what inference can we make about Egypt? Yeah, and if you're thinking about, Egypt uses less machinery than United States and Netherlands when it comes to agriculture. You're absolutely right. All right, so here's some definitions that we're going to cover. Natural increase rate. This is the percentage by which a population grows in a year. The global natural increase rate is currently 1.2, meaning the world is growing at a rate of 1.2% annually. And more than 95% of natural increases currently occur in developing countries. So going back to this, Egypt would be one of those developing countries where you would have a higher population growth than, say, United States or the Netherlands or even Canada. And there's a reason behind that. So what do we see on this map? I want you to pause for a minute and think about where you have the highest natural increase rates versus the lowest natural increase rates. And yes, you're right. Africa has a high natural increase rate. So if you have a higher than 1.2% natural increase rate, you have a high natural increase rate. Whereas if you have it lower than 1.2%, you have a low or possibly negative natural increase rate. And negative just means that when it's under 1%. It's not uncommon for developing countries to have a negative natural increase rate, which means that their population is not growing. So historically, people lived very short lives, and then you start to get into the Industrial Revolution, you get into the Medical Revolution, and population starts to boom. So world population, we're about 7.4 billion people today. So here's a natural increase rate chart. So as you can see in the 1950s to 2017, the natural increase rate started to decline. So it went up in some instances and then it started to slowly decline. And if we're looking at it, the world population is increasing globally, but in 95% of the world population is in developing countries. All right. So natural increase occurs when birth exceeds death rates. So crude birth rates are your live births over 1,000 people per year, where your crude death rates are number of deaths over 1,000 people per year. Now, your total fertility rate is the average number of children a woman will have throughout her childbearing years. So typically women will have children between the ages of 15 to about 35. So women typically in developed countries are having children older, whereas in developing countries, women are having children at a younger age. And then infant mortality rate is the annual number of deaths of an infant under 1 year of age. So think about why you would have a high number of deaths in infants. Why would you have an high infant mortality rate? A lot of you are probably thinking because of healthcare. Yes, so all of these numbers are important, especially this one, because it tells you about a country's development. It tells you about access to healthcare. All of these things matter. Then you have the highest birth rates that are concentrated in Africa and Southwest Asia. On this map, you've got high birth rates, but also look at the map when you have high death rates. So when we talk about the demographic transition model in a moment, you will see a little bit of the pattern here. And then you have the highest infant mortality rates. Where are they at? They're in sub-Saharan Africa. So this region right here, sub-Saharan Africa, while the lowest are in Europe. So sub-Saharan Africa still is developing in healthcare, while Europe is fairly developed, very developed actually. And then here's your death rates. So death rates, what you notice is that death rates are higher in Asia and also in Africa. So there's a reason behind that, especially Russia. And so when we get into demographic transition, you will understand. So each country goes through a stage of demographic transition. It's just a process of development. So this impacts the population. So, but typically in the first stage, you have very high birth rates and you also have very high death rates. So you have a very low natural increase rate. But when countries transition to the second stage, you have high birth rates and you start having declining death rates. So these are just transitions into different stages, and I will show you the stages here. So when you're in stage 2, you have a very high natural increase rate. Now stage 3, you've got more of a moderate growth rate. So this starts to tell us the development, and also the cost of having children starts to increase in stage 3 and stage 4. Scholars keep in mind in stage 2 and 3, people are economically dependent on their children. So a lot of times their children will go off to work and will help to build the economy. Well, as countries progress in technology, in sustainability in their healthcare system, better government policies, all of these different factors start to influence the population. So you start seeing more of the lower growth. You start seeing low or negative natural increase rates as birth rates start to decline and death rates start to increase slightly. There's also a stage 5. So stage 5 is when you have higher death rates than you have birth rates. A lot of you are probably thinking, what? Is that even possible? Yes, it is. Japan and Russia are actually in stage 5 right now. And we will talk about why they're in stage 5 later in our unit. So this is a chart right here. Stage 2, you have very high natural increase rate. And then you have high birth rates. You start to see the death rates decline. And in stage 3, you start to see the natural increase rate and the birth rates start to decline. And in stage 3, it's because you have the introduction of birth control. And also, women are having more rights. So gender equality is greater, and there's a decrease in gender inequality in stage 3. Now, stage 4, it's called zero population growth. So the population isn't growing anymore. So this is where you start to see some of those negative NIR. So in stage 2, again, I will show you. So in our next video, I'll talk about population pyramids and how this relates to demographic transition.